Hello, I'm Elijah Landrum, and this is...
Michael Gazaway, and I am a software engineer with the National Security Agency.
Is there anything you could tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm what's often referred to as a back-end engineer. That means I kind of steer away from the things that are UI focused. I also do a little bit of what's known as digital signal processing within my role in the NSA. The program that I work on generally takes sensors that are arranged globally and make it so that they can speak with each other and by proxy ourselves at the NSA.
That's cool. So would you say, like, what's some stuff that you did like earlier in your career, earlier in your life?
Career or life? Because those are two... Life. Well, I was born at a young age. After that, I did what most normal people would. Went through school, elementary. I went to a state school in California, Fresno State. I did that for international finance. I graduated there. From there, I worked for a winery and did international acquisitions. Out of that, given the times and what was happening globally, I joined the Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, I began working as a defense contractor. And then after defense contracting, I moved over to NSA Georgia and started doing software engineering.
When did you was there a time where you started taking interest in specifically technology or specifically that, or was it a smooth transition or was it a big switch?
Well, so my father was a computer engineer for a company called Dantel. They did PCB boards, on-demand PCB boards, and then he started doing software engineering for a camera company called Pelco. So even from a young age, I had access to technology. So whenever the 386 came out, I got the 286. When he got the 486, I got the 386, and Pentium 2, Pentium 3, etc. So I had access to a computer from very early on in life, and probably wrote my first program when I was 5 or 6. And I did do IT to pay for college for myself. So at that same winery, I was within their IT division, and I did things like networking, webmail hosting, setting up user computers, etc.
Yeah.
So I've always had a strong affinity for technology, but at that point I had never really considered it in my career, and maybe it's because it was just part of my general life growing up that I didn't think about it as a career until after I got out of the Marine Corps and was wondering, after I stopped defense contracting, which was essentially the same job as what I was doing in the Marine Corps, and was looking for what I was going to be doing next. And that's when I decided to use the GI Bill and went to Penn State and got my baccalaureate, my second baccalaureate, this time in computer science.
Do you have any of habits or stuff that help you work or help you succeed?
I don't know if I have what I would consider habits. I actually have poor habits when it comes to being successful. I was, that typical gifted kid. I didn't have to study. I graduated with a 4.12 GPA. It actually hindered me quite a bit. And then when I joined the Marine Corps, my MOS was, so I joined the Marine Corps very abruptly. I went down to MEPS, which is where they process you, and I took the SFAB. I thought I missed one, but it turns out that I got a 99, which was a perfect score, and I did very well in GT and language proficiency. And just by happenstance, they asked me if I wanted to take the D-Lab, which was an evaluation on how good I would be at learning a language. So I took that test. I did well on it. And then I ended up in DLI, being immersed in learning a language. And it's not something that and there's a lot of studies that back this up, unless you are a developing child, like it's very hard to pick up languages. So struggling through DLI is where I really picked up very good habits when it came to how to study, how to be disciplined. Obviously, I'm in the Marine Corps, so they beat discipline into me. But it wasn't until DLI, and there's a couple things that I picked up. And I don't know if I would call them habits, as I would call them frames of reference. The first is the Feynman method. The Feynman method is, if you were studying something, the only way to know if you've mastered that particular piece of information is to stand in front of a whiteboard without any notes and explain it entirety. Everything you know about the subject, everything you know about that particular thing. So if I was the application for language, I would, I had transformed everything over into that language. I was reading only in Serbian. I even had my WoW character move to a European server and joined a Serbian guild. And I was just trying to consume it entirely. But when you're sitting there and you're trying to raid in WoW, and the only way to communicate with the person is in Serbian, that's sort of the Feynman method where that's applicable. I use it in general to this day when it's like, okay, do I have mastery of this subject yet? I explain it all, and then you sit there and you look at what you've done and you've written down, and you're like, does this actually encompass everything that I thought I knew or need to know? And generally, if you can even get to the point where you can identify the gaps in what it is you've explained, where you're sitting there, you're like, I'm aware of this topic, but I can't correctly explain it. Even just the exercise of doing that will give you mastery. And your question was about success. And as someone who is in a technical profession, success often comes down to how well you have mastered the topics that you're supposed to have proficiency in. The second thing is it's probably best described as gaslighting yourself into being enthusiastic about a subject. In my CS degree and in what I'm doing now, I'll explain exactly what the challenge was. So I took all the way through Calculus 2 when I was working on my original degree, and this was back in 2001. And then I started redoing my CS degree. Obviously, some of those credits transferred over. They gave me credit for Calculus 2. So now I'm going into discrete mathematics, and I have not used mathematics for 15 years. So now all of a sudden I have to relearn mathematics, and we're talking from a fairly bare bones, like there are concepts in geometry and algebra 2 and trig especially, that I just did not have command of, and I was expected to have all of this down pat. And by faking enthusiasm, I was able to study through and master all of that in very short time. And the best thing I can do is, there's probably something. Now I'm going to reveal that I do know a little bit about my interviewer. When it comes to something that you markedly enjoy, where you're the one looking at YouTube videos and building maps inside of games, etc., it's very easy for you to dedicate your time to that. By essentially gaslighting myself into, oh yeah, I'm enthusiastic about this, you actually get to the point where you do gain mastery of it, and that enthusiasm comes. And the phrase that I use is, there is nothing more fun than competence. If you are competent at whatever it is that you're doing, all the anxieties, et cetera, that surround that activity, they melt away immediately. and I'm sure you've seen it, and you might have done it yourself, where you were in a subject and you love that class, you are pals with the teacher, there's only curiosity in the questions and all of the anxiety about whether or not you're going to do well or master that particular subject, they just are non-extant. So yeah, those are the two things, the two concepts that I would put forward as the keys to my success.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about your work a lot. What are just some things that you like to do outside of work?
Well, without coming across as a trope, I like gaming, I like anime, I like chess, I love reading. I'm a huge advocate of physical books. Like, I can't deal with Kindles and e-readers. Like, I've got probably around 13 to 15,000 books. Yeah, that's what I spend most of my time doing. I have recently, in the last couple of years, started doing woodworking, which I had a functional knowledge of from when I was growing up. But I've been doing things that are a lot more complicated, and actually making lots of improvements within my home myself, because I can, honestly, if you just put a little bit of time into it, you can generally do a better job than most contractors.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking for a while, but I would like to ask you just one final question before we end this. Where do you see yourself just in the future, like 10 to 20 years from now?
Ooh, in 20 years, I will be hard retired. I was lucky enough to exit the Marine Corps in around 2010, which was the peak of the financial crisis. And then I went and contracted in Afghanistan, which paid quite a bit. And that was during the major reconstruction years inside of the United States, but most markedly, the markets themselves. So I did incredibly well during that period of time. And I am probably 10 years away from retirement. And that is, yeah, so in 10 years I'll be retired, likely traveling. I do have some aspirations to build my forever home in New Zealand, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. And yeah, that's the answer to that question.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm Elijah Landrum. This is Michael Gazaway, software engineer at the NSA. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Signing off.